The Milky Way is a vast neighborhood with over 400 billion stars, and humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone. Turns out they weren't. Also turns out their neighbors were kind of jerks. The Zolaxians prided themselves on being the galaxy's premier xenobiological researchers. With 16 tentacles, an exoskeleton that changed colors with their moods, and a superiority complex that could fill a black hole, but they'd spent millennia collecting specimens from across the cosmos. Their latest research project? Primitive species with rudimentary technology and amusing evolutionary quirks. Humans appear to have evolved from tree-dwelling mammals, yet they fear heights. Fascinating contradiction. Chief researcher Grax announced to his crew as their cloaked ship hovered above the Houston Science Center's planetarium. Their young appear particularly underdeveloped, requiring nearly 2 decades of nurturing before achieving minimal competence. His assistant Vexor, whose tentacles were always tangled in knots from anxiety, checked their scanners. "Sir, our preliminary data suggests these creatures may have unusually strong attachments to their offspring." Grax's exoskeleton flashed a dismissive purple. "All species claim special bonds with their young. None have ever presented complications. Execute collection protocol Epsilon." Down below, Miss Penny Martinez was having the Monday of all Mondays. 34th graders hyped up on sugar, a planetarium show that kept glitching, and now a mysterious green light filtering through the ceiling. "If this is another budget cutback from the district, I swear I'm switching to pharmaceutical sales," she muttered, pushing her thick-rimmed glasses up her nose. At 35, with perpetually untamed curly hair and a collection of space-themed sweaters, and Penny had the uncanny ability to silence a rowdy classroom with a single raised eyebrow. That skill was proving useless against whatever was happening now. Doug Moriarty, the planetarium's janitor, was mopping nearby. At 58, with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and forearms covered in faded military tattoos, few would guess he'd once been Delta Force. Even fewer knew he only took the janitor job because he liked the quiet and the stars. "MS. Martinez," Mop said calmly. "I believe we're experiencing what the military calls an extraction." "What military calls a what now?" Penny started, but her question was cut short as the ceiling seemed to dissolve, replaced by a swirling vortex of light. Little Riley Kowalski, front row center with her hand perpetually raised, pointed upward. "Miss Martinez, is this part of the show? Because it looks like the alien abduction documentary my mom doesn't know I watched." Before Penny could answer, 30 children floated upward like balloons released at a birthday party, their excited squeals echoing through the planetarium. "Not part of the show," Penny shouted, lunging to grab at passing ankles, missing each one. Mop dropped his mop with military precision and vaulted over 3 rows of seats, managing to catch hold of little Jamila Washington's shoelace. But the tractor beam proved stronger than an ex-Special Forces grip, and the shoelace simply untied, leaving him holding a neon pink lace as Jamila and her classmates vanished into the light. As suddenly as it began, the vortex closed. The planetarium fell silent except for the awkwardly continuing show about Neptune's moons. Penny and Mop stood alone in the room, staring at the intact ceiling. "Please tell me that didn't just happen," Penny whispered. Mop held up the pink shoelace. "I need to make a call to some old friends." Humanity's first verified contact with extraterrestrial intelligence being the abduction of 34th graders wasn't exactly the take-me-to-your-leader scenario depicted in the movies. It was more of a, we're going to take your leaders, specifically the short ones who still believe in the tooth fairy situation. Within hours, every major news network globally had the same headline, "Aliens take our kids." The stock market crashed, then rallied when someone pointed out that defense contractors were about to have their best quarter ever. Religious leaders called for calm while quietly updating their doctrines. Twitter's servers melted down under hashtags like Bring Them Home and Humanitify. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session, where for once no one argued about anything. The unanimous resolution can be paraphrased as, get our kids back, and then possibly establish diplomatic relations with the aliens, but mostly the first thing. At NASA headquarters, A hastily assembled war room buzzed with activity. Maps of the solar system projected on walls, satellite data streaming in, and a collection of the world's most brilliant scientists, military strategists, and surprisingly, elementary school teachers. Admiral Helen Mama Bear Kowalski pounded her fist on the conference table. At 60, with iron gray hair cropped short and a chest full of medals that clinked when she moved, she had commanded nuclear submarines and NATO operations. None of that mattered now. What mattered was that her niece, Riley, was among the abducted. "I want options, people. Viable options for pursuit and recovery," she growled. Dr. Len Kurosawa, head of NASA's Experimental Propulsion Lab, cleared his throat nervously. "Well, there is Project Longshot. The faster-than-light drive that keeps exploding?" someone asked. "Nah. It only exploded twice," Kurosawa corrected. "The third test merely caused an unexpected rift in the space-time continuum." "Is it ready?" Kowalski demanded. "Ready? No. Will it work? Maybe. Will it kill everyone on board? Possibly less likely than last month. Install it on whatever we've got that can fly," Kowalski ordered. The president authorized Operation Playground with unprecedented funding and authority. Parents of the missing children were offered positions as advisors. Teachers were consulted on child psychology. Military personnel volunteered in droves, many saying some variation of, "I don't have kids, but I'll fight like they were mine." Penny Martinez found herself in a NASA jumpsuit, being briefed on alien contact protocols that had been theorized but never tested. "Remind me why I'm here again," she asked Mop, who was methodically checking a suspiciously large duffel bag of cleaning supplies. "Because you know those kids," he answered. "Their habits, their allergies, their personalities. And because after what we saw, no one's going to convince either of us to stay behind." Penny nodded, clutching the class roster she'd refused to let go of since the abduction. "I take attendance every morning. I'm not stopping now." As humanity prepared for its first interstellar rescue mission, Admiral Kowalski addressed the hastily assembled crew. "We're about to make history," she said grimly. "But none of us care about that. We care about 30 kids who are scared and far from home. The aliens who took them have made a fundamental error in judgment. They assumed they were dealing with just another species. They don't realize yet that they've taken children from the most relentless, stubborn, and protective species in the galaxy, human parents and teachers." She looked around the room, her eyes hard as flint. "Let's go educate them." Humanity's first interstellar pursuit vessel was, to put it kindly, a rush job. NASA's prototype shuttle had been retrofitted with Dr. Kurosawa's long-shot drive, which looked suspiciously like something built from parts ordered from multiple countries with lax export controls. The ship had been christened Playground Duty, a name that made perfect sense to anyone who'd ever supervised recess at an elementary school. The crew was equally improvised, a mix of NASA's bravest test pilots, military specialists who had experience with unconventional extractions, and scientists who understood the experimental drive enough to possibly fix it when it inevitably malfunctioned, and of course, Penny Martinez and Doug Moriarty as cultural consultants for the abducted children. "I never thought I'd miss cafeteria duty," Penny muttered as she strapped into a seat clearly designed for someone with more flight hours and fewer anxieties about space travel. "Just think of it as a field trip," Mop suggested from the seat beside her, looking far too comfortable for someone about to be hurled through space at theoretical speeds. One with possible aliens and certain nausea. The long-shot drive, true to its creator's promises, didn't explode. What it did do was bend reality in ways that made everyone on board briefly taste the color blue and feel nostalgic for places they'd never been. When they emerged from the first jump, the navigational system showed they were beyond the Kuiper Belt. "That's impossible," the navigator whispered. "We've gone farther in 10 minutes than Voyager did in decades." "Track them," Kowalski ordered from the command chair she'd claimed through rank and sheer intimidation. "The alien ship left trace radiation we can follow." The Playground Duty followed the trail through 2 more jumps, each taking them farther from Earth than humanity had ever ventured. After the third jump, they encountered another ship, sleek, crystalline, and decidedly not human in design. "We're being hailed," the communications officer announced, surprise evident in her voice. A holographic projection appeared on the bridge showing a being that resembled a cross between a deer and a jellyfish, with bioluminescent patterns pulsing across its translucent skin. Unidentified vessel, it spoke in oddly accented English. Later they would learn it had quickly downloaded Earth's internet to communicate. "You have entered the territory of the Zolaxian Collective. Your propulsion signature is unknown to our databases. Please identify your species and purpose." Admiral Kowalski stood. "We are humans from Earth. We're pursuing a ship that abducted 30 of our children. Have you encountered a Zolaxian research vessel?" The aliens' lights pulsed rapidly, their equivalent of wide-eyed shock. "You're pursuing Zolaxians? For taking specimens?" "No species as ever. The Zolaxians have been collecting specimens from developing worlds for millennia. It's considered their scientific right within the Galactic Accord." "They took our kids," Penny interjected, stepping forward. "Not specimens, children. With families. With favorite stuffed animals and homework due on Friday and parents who are worried sick." The alien seemed confused. "All species reproduce. Specimens are always returned after study, usually with only minor neurological alterations." Mop stepped forward and somehow, despite the lack of weapons visible, managed to look extraordinarily dangerous. "Which way did they go?" Perhaps it was his tone or perhaps the collective glare of every human on the bridge, but the Zolaxian quickly provided coordinates and added, "What? If you're really going after Zolaxians, your species is either very brave or very irrational." "It's a human specialty to be both simultaneously," Kowalski replied. "Now move your ship aside or we'll move it for you." As they continued their pursuit, they encountered 2 more alien species with similar reactions. A mixture of bafflement and disturbed fascination at the humans' single-minded determination. "I don't understand," Penny said after their third encounter. "How can they not get why we're upset? Don't they have children?" "Some species don't raise their young," one of the xenobiologists explained. "They lay eggs and move on, or their young are self-sufficient from birth. Others handle child-rearing communally without strong individual attachments. The concept of human parental bonds might be as alien to them as their reproduction is to us." "Well," Mop said, checking the edge on what was definitely not a standard NASA issue knife, "they're about to get a crash course in human parenting philosophy. Specifically the part about what happens when someone messes with our kids." The Zolaxian research vessel Empirical Certainty was experiencing what Chief Scientist Grax's report would later euphemistically call unexpected specimen behavior. What the ship's damaged systems would call it was total chaos. Dr. Quibb, the junior xenobiologist assigned to direct observation of the human young, was regretting every life decision that had led to this moment. His 3 hearts were palpitating asynchronously, and his exoskeleton had been stuck in a distressed yellow-green for so long he feared it might be permanent. "Vexor," he called to his assistant. "Where are specimens 17 through 24? Vexor's tentacles twisted nervously. They were in containment sphere B, but they escaped again. "Men. How? Those barriers are designed to hold creatures 3 times their size with 10 times their strength." "They didn't break it," Vexor explained. "They convinced it to open by making sounds that triggered our audio-based emergency protocols. They imitated the distress call of juvenile Peruvian swamp lizards with remarkable accuracy. But how would they even know what? They didn't. They just made increasingly ridiculous noises until something worked. They called it making fart sounds with their armpits." In the ship's central research hub, 10-year-old Jamila Washington was holding court. While some might have expected tears and terror from abducted children, the 4th graders of Houston Elementary had apparently decided this was the ultimate adventure. "Listen up, everybody," Jamila announced. Her tight curls were pulled back with a sparkly headband, and she wore an expression of determined leadership that would have made Admiral Kowalski proud. "We've taken control of Sections 3 and 4. Team Dinosaur has the food dispensers working, and Team Unicorn has figured out the floating light thingies." Riley Kowalski raised her hand, still following classroom protocol despite being on an alien ship. "Jamila, I want to report that the toilet things don't have seats and I think they might be for tentacles, not butts. Noted, Jamila replied seriously. Bathroom committee, work on that. Meanwhile, Operation Annoy Aliens continues. They won't let us go home? Fine, we'll make them want to take us home. The children had organized themselves with the ruthless efficiency only kids can achieve when adults aren't directing them. They'd discovered that the ship's systems responded to voice commands and that the aliens had no concept of childproofing. What had begun as bewildered exploration had evolved into systematic testing of what they could control. In the ship's command center, alarms blared as Grax confronted his increasingly rattled crew. What do you mean? The gravity is offline in the specimen habitats, he demanded. Dyke. The small humans discovered that our environmental controls recognize anyone as authorized users, a technician explained miserably. They've been floating and calling it 0G tag for 3 hours. When we try to restore gravity, they say override and it obeys them. Surely we can just physically retrieve them? The technician's color shifted to embarrassed mauve. The last crew member who attempted that was incapacitated. By tiny primitive mammals? How? They waited until he was surrounded, asked innocent questions about his tentacles, then all simultaneously screamed at a pitch that caused temporary paralysis in his neural ganglia. Then they decorated him. Back in the children's newly claimed territory, Max Chen, a quiet boy with a knack for mechanics, had dismantled what turned out to be the ship's internal communication device. I think this is basically a phone, he told Jamila, but like a super advanced one. Can you make it call Earth? Another child asked. No, but I can make it play the same message on every speaker on the ship. Meme. Jamila's grin was positively diabolical. Does anyone remember all the words to Baby Shark? By the time Dr. Quibb managed to track down the escaped specimens, the damage was done. The ship's mess hall had been redecorated with what appeared to be abstract art created from food paste. 3 security officers were trapped in a storage compartment where the children had overridden the door controls. And worst of all, the ship's entire database of collected scientific knowledge was now somehow organized by what the children called vibes rather than any recognizable taxonomy. Impressive, aren't they? Came a voice behind him. Dr. Quibb turned to find a small human, casually eating something purple that definitely wasn't meant for consumption. You're their leader, Quibb said, recognizing Jamila. Please, we are scientists. We mean no harm. We just want to study you. Did you ask permission? Jamila challenged. My mom says nothing goes on this body without my permission. Not even Aunt Louise's scratchy sweater kisses. For the first time in his career, Dr. Quibb felt a glimmer of understanding that perhaps, just perhaps, the Zolaxian approach to xenobiology had some ethical oversights. We did not consider permission necessary, he admitted. No species has ever objected before. No species ever turned your ship into a playground before either, huh? Jamila grinned. You've got about 5 minutes before the slime in the ventilation system reaches the bridge. You might want to tell your boss we want to go home. Now. Now. Dr. Quibb's exoskeleton turned a pale, defeated blue. What is slime? You'll find out, Jamila said with the serene confidence of a child who has created chaos with adult supervision for years and was now discovering the joy of doing so without it. The playground duty dropped out of its final jump with alarms blaring and systems overheating, but intact, which Dr. Kurosawa counted as an absolute win. Before them floated the Zolaxian research vessel, an iridescent construct that resembled an elegant sea creature frozen in metal and crystal. Hail them, Admiral Kowalski ordered, straightening her uniform. The view screen flickered to life, revealing what appeared to be a crisis situation aboard the alien ship. In the background, small humans zipped by in zero gravity. Something green and viscous dripped from the ceiling. A chorus of high-pitched voices could be heard singing what sounded suspiciously like the 5th repeat of a song about a baby shark. The alien commander's exoskeleton was flashing between colors so rapidly it resembled a disco ball. Unknown vessel, he said with forced dignity. This is Chief Researcher Grax of the Zolaxian Empirical Certainty. You are interfering with a sanctioned scientific. Cut the crap, Admiral Kowalski interrupted. I'm Admiral Helen Kowalski of Earth, and you have our children. Return them immediately, or face the consequences. Grax's tentacles waved dismissively. Your primitive threats are meaningless. The Zolaxian Collective has technology far beyond your comprehension. These specimens will be returned after standard observation period of approximately 3 of your Earth years. From somewhere off-screen came a child's voice. We reprogrammed the food machines to only make ice cream. Grax's color shifted to an embarrassed purple. The observation period may need to be shortened due to unexpected variables. Penny Martinez pushed her way to the front. Those variables are 4th graders, you tentacled kidnapper. 4th graders who missed lunch and their afternoon naps. I'm their teacher, and even I can barely handle them when they're overtired and sugared up. Another voice from off-screen. Dr. Squiggles turned blue when we showed him our booger collection. Mop joined Penny at the view screen. You have exactly 10 minutes to begin transfer procedures before we dock forcibly and retrieve the children ourselves. Grax laughed. At least the sound he made was probably his species' equivalent of laughter. Your vessel couldn't possibly breach our defenses. Admiral Kowalski smiled thinly. We tracked you across interstellar space in a ship we cobbled together in 3 days. What makes you think we can't get through your door? Before Grax could respond, the view screen split to show a second alien, this one's exoskeleton a panicked shade of green. Chief researcher. The small humans have accessed the environmental controls. They've filled the tertiary research lab with I don't know what it is, but it smells like artificial fruit, and it's expanding. That would be slime, Penny explained helpfully. It's a popular craft project. Equal parts glue and liquid starch with food coloring. Jamila's mom is a chemical engineer who does science birthday parties. I'm guessing they found your equivalent materials. Impossible. Grax protested. Our laboratories are completely secure. The second alien made a sound like a deflating balloon. They told the system they needed the materials for important science stuff, and apparently our AI categorized them as research assistants based on their curiosity metrics. On the human ship, one of the NASA technicians whispered, those kids are geniuses, with undisguised admiration. The negotiation deteriorated further when Riley Kowalski somehow gained access to the Zolaxian communication system and began broadcasting directly to her aunt. Auntie Helen, we're having so much fun. We taught the aliens how to play freeze tag, but they're not very good at it because they have too many legs. Can we stay just one more day? Jamila figured out how to make their computers do cool stuff, and Max is building a fort in the anti-gravity room. Dr. Quibb appeared on screen, looking thoroughly defeated. Please, he begged, take them back. We surrender. We apologize for the unauthorized collection. We had no idea human young were so. Energetic? Penny suggested. Ingenious? Mop added. Completely terrifying, Dr. Quibb finished. We've studied thousands of species but never encountered such a combination of curiosity, fearlessness, and sticky fingers. Arrangements were made for docking and transfer, though complications arose when several children expressed reluctance to leave before completing what they called their science experiment, which appeared to involve determining how many times the ship's AI could be made to say silly words before it developed what they were calling a sense of humor. As the human rescue team boarded the Zolaxian vessel, they found the aliens in a state of exhausted defeat. Dr. Quibb personally escorted Admiral Kowalski and the others to the central area the children had claimed as their headquarters. I must know, he asked Penny as they walked. Is this typical behavior for human offspring? This? Penny glanced around at the controlled chaos, the repurposed equipment, the walls decorated with drawings made from substances clearly not intended as art supplies. This is actually them on good behavior. You should see them when they're being difficult. Dr. Quibb's exoskeleton paled to an almost translucent white. There's worse? Oh, honey. Penny patted one of his tentacles sympathetically. You have no idea. The return journey to Earth was considerably slower than the pursuit, partly because the long-shot drive had partially melted, and partly because the Zolaxians, though now firmly educated in the concept of parental wrath, had agreed to escort them home in a gesture of interstellar apology. The children, for their part, were treating the whole experience like the best field trip ever. They had compiled extensive research notes on the aliens, mostly consisting of drawings of Zolaxians doing silly things, and had somehow convinced Dr. Quibb to serve as a guest lecturer for their science class. And that's how Zolaxians breathe through their skin pores, Dr. Quibb explained, his tentacles demonstrating as 30 children watched in fascinated disgust. "Can you do the color change again?" Max asked. "The one that happened when we put the slime in the captain's personal quarters?" Dr. Quibb obliged, his exoskeleton shifting to a mortified pinkish gray as the children cheered. On the bridge of the Zolaxian ship, now temporarily under joint human-alien command, Admiral Kowalski and Chief Researcher Grax were engaged in what diplomatic records would later call frank discussions about interspecies protocols. "The Galactic Accord has never encountered a species so attached to their young," Grax admitted. "Most space-faring civilizations manage reproduction through clinical processes. The concept of family units as you practice them is quite rare. Maybe that's why you've never had a ship taken over by children before," Kowalski suggested dryly. By the time they reached Earth, the story had spread across the galaxy. The Zolaxians, faced with a public relations disaster of cosmic proportions, found themselves reluctantly cast as cultural ambassadors explaining humans to the wider galactic community. The children returned to heroes' welcomes, though the Houston School District was quick to announce that the alien abduction incident would not excuse anyone from turning in their book reports on time. The media dubbed them the Space 30, and they became instant celebrities, a status they primarily used to negotiate for less homework and more recess time. Earth's sudden awareness of its galactic neighbors led to frantic diplomatic, military, and scientific preparations. The United Nations hastily established a Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, with Admiral Kowalski appointed as its first director. 6 months later, the Galactic Accord formally recognized Earth and established the Interspecies Child Protection Act, informally known across the galaxy as the Don't Even Think About It law. Xenobiologists were required to take courses in research ethics taught by a rotating faculty of human elementary school teachers, led by Professor Penny Martinez, whose book No Means No, Consent-Based Xenobiology became standard reading in alien universities. Doug Moriarty declined all public attention and returned to his janitorial position at the planetarium, though rumors persisted that he was now secretly training a specialized team of space janitors for interstellar incidents. As for the children, most adjusted well to their return, though parent-teacher conferences that year featured some unusual behavioral notes. "Riley shows excellent leadership skills but needs to stop telling the computer to override when asked to clean her room." Max has disassembled the classroom smartboard 3 times. He has also improved its functionality each time. Jamila continues to organize her peers with remarkable efficiency, though her suggestion to improve the cafeteria food with unauthorized chemical combinations has been firmly discouraged. On the 1-year anniversary of the abduction, a small Zolaxian delegation visited Earth for a formal ceremony of apology and cultural exchange. Dr. Quibb, now the leading expert on human children in the galaxy, gave a presentation that had the diplomatic corps alternately laughing and horrified. Conclusion. He said, his exoskeleton a respectful blue, "We have learned that the most dangerous force in the known universe is not a supernova, a black hole, or even a quantum instability. It is a human child with curiosity, a human parent with determination, and a human teacher with a classroom management plan." Later that evening, Jamila Washington's mother was unpacking her daughter's school bag when she noticed something unusual, a small container that seemed to glow from within. Inside was what appeared to be a miniature aquarium housing a tiny, tentacled creature that changed colors when Jamila entered the room. "Jamila," her mother asked carefully, "what is this?" "That's Blinky," Jamila replied with perfect innocence. "My science project. Dr. Quibb said I could keep him as long as I feed him and take him for walks in zero gravity at least twice a month." "And how exactly are we supposed to achieve zero gravity in our apartment?" Jamila grinned and held up what was definitely not Earth technology. I've got an app for that. As Blinky changed to a contented purple, and the Washington family apartment briefly experienced localized gravitational anomalies, somewhere in the vast expanse of the galaxy, but the story was being told and retold. Never, ever mess with human offspring. Their protectors will cross the stars to find you, and the children themselves will turn your world upside down, sometimes literally.